Hey, welcome. It's Bryan, and this is Guitar Solo Reactions. Today's a special video, part one of a video that we recently shot with Bryan from Yes You Can Play Guitar, and we talk about Prince and Prince's gear, Prince's music, how we came to find out about Prince, and how we've discovered all these amazing fans that love Prince on YouTube, and how our channel's grown significantly for doing content associated with Prince. And we are also joined by the Solitary Adventurer, who's a friend to both of us, friends to the channel, and has done lots of great advising and given us lots of information about Prince. So I hope you enjoy it, and please come back for part two. Thanks.
I just want to say hi to everybody, all the people out there, Prince fans. I think there was a few Polyphia fans too. They've asked that I have the discussion with the Bryans, the two guitar players talking about Prince, talking about Polyphia and all that. A number of people have asked me. So here we are on my end. I want to say hello again. Of course, we have the Solitary Adventurer, who's been a great friend to
Yes.
my channel. And so hi on my end. Nice to finally meet you, Bryan.
Nice to meet you as well. And super excited. The Solitary Adventure as well has been really sweet to me and sent me tons of stuff. And I don't know if it's the same for you, Bryan, but I have more than 4 or 5 people that send me like, here's Prince's lineup, and guitar stuff mostly, but things I'd never seen, like you were mentioning. And
Yeah, no, absolutely.
so
And to differentiate between the Bryans, which is the biggest challenge of today, I guess I'm going to be called Bryan with a Y. I guess we got Bryan with an I.
yeah, that works.
Okay. All right. So I'll act as a little bit of a moderator, and then I think when
Absolutely.
we start to talk about the Prince stuff, I'll probably be there to sort of fill in the recollection of which TV show was it, which award ceremony, and that kind of thing. So I think let's just start with how you got into music and how you got started and what your first instrument was. Just a general introduction. And we'll go guest first, Bryan with an I.
Yeah. Yeah, I started playing guitar when I was young. I was played in hardcore bands in the Midwest of the States. And I was a terrible guitar player for a really, really long time. And I just kind of kept at it. But I always loved guitar of all genres. And, that's why we're talking today, obviously, too. But yeah, I've been in kind of more avant-garde jazz bands for the last like 20, 30 years, and never played anything like Prince. I wish, but I can't. So yeah, kind of what's on my channel is not what I would play, and to be honest, it's not what I really listen to as much as well. So yeah, so that's
Interesting.
kind of
And
in a nutshell.
no, it's good. It's good. And I suppose that the question I always have for guys who are advanced on one instrument, is it
Oh
your only instrument or do you play
no, I
other?
can barely play guitar, but it's always been guitar.
Okay. And Bryan with a Y, I know that you did a long interview over the last week that's been going up. And I've deliberately not watched them because I didn't want to preempt what your answer would be here.
Okay. Are we talking about with Rob Arnold from Camara or
The new channel
the Shred
that you
Guitar
helped out.
TV? Yes, yes.
Yeah.
He was a very nice fellow too. Yeah, it's one of the things I believe is very important, and the whole basis for my channel really is the world's gone crazy. We could get into politics, we get into what's going on in the world and everything. The world really is. I was just out getting groceries yesterday. I thought, man, I'm going to have to go to a life of crime to be able to afford to eat soon. The price of food, but on the channel, it's just like, look, we all love music. I have a huge background in history with guitar and music and performance. Let's just talk about music. Let's just talk about music.
And are you proficient, I suppose, on any of the other instruments?
Guitar is definitely my thing. I've had to learn to. I used to be really in the hard rock metal bands, and then I quickly realized as I got on in my 20s, I got tired of being broke and I wanted to eat and get some bills paid. So I sold my soul and I started playing in country bands. I've studied jazz. I've done a lot of different styles of music. What was the question then?
Just your beginnings
Yeah,
on,
okay.
on guitar
Yeah,
and any other instruments.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had an older brother who He's 10 years older than I, and he really had an eclectic taste of music. I have to credit him with getting into a lot of different music. I remember in his collection, he had everything from Blondie to the Police to ZZ Top to he was really into first wave. But once I started hearing hard rock in the early '80s, and then it progressed from there to heavier bands. But again, I really do, and I'm open minded to pretty much all music. And if I think something sucks, I'll say it sucks. But I got into guitar, and then as I kind of delved further and further with my musical education and performing, and wanting to actually earn an income, I do teach bass. I can play bass. And I also learned to sing. I'm not great, but I have functional vocals. So if I was in a band with someone who was a good singer and they were sick, or they needed me to sing 5 or 10 songs just to give them a break, people would say, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's okay." So functional vocals, sing a few harmonies, but yeah, a little bit of keyboards.
Yeah. So we've got a mutual friend to both of the channels, Ellie from
Yes.
France.
Yes.
So Ellie had asked about, sort of your first instrument experiences. But one question that he asked was, what have you done for work outside of music to help fund the life with the guitar, if that's the case? Yeah.
Well,
So we'll go Bryan with an I.
yeah, for me, I've never made any money playing music. I mean, I've taught lessons and stuff like that, but I've sold wine and spirits for a couple of decades, and that's how I supported myself and my family. And music's always just been a way to waste any extra money that, buying equipment. And doing this channel has not helped because I've always been into pedals, but getting into Prince, I bought a Color Sound wah recently, and that was just for me for fun or whatever. But every time I'm like, hey, I'm gonna cool it on the pedals. I don't keep anything for the most part. I have probably 20 pedals, but I've had literally hundreds and hundreds, and I'll buy them and sell them and all of that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an
When you're a musician, you get it. You understand. It's once you're a musician and you get into that, I definitely get it for sure.
Yeah, but never really. Yeah, so I've sold wine and spirits for money. So.
Yeah. Well, you'll be doing okay with the inflation at the moment. You'll be one of the few who's recession proof.
Well, sorta. There's always that saying: you drink when you're happy and when you're sad. I don't ethically agree with that. It's kind of a job where I do it because I've done it. It's not like I don't drink a lot. All of that. So it's not it's not a moral thing. I just sometimes I'm like, ugh, this is how you make money doing this kind of thing. So, but yeah, inflation here in the States, I sell a lot of really expensive wine, and I'm amazed that people can spend that kind of money on one bottle of wine.
Where in the States are you, Brian? Are you out in the West Coast?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yep. You have great trees. There's a better way to say it, but the size of the trees in Oregon is spellbinding.
It's in my part of Washington. I'm from Seattle. I lived in Seattle for 30 years. I moved here like 3 years ago or whatever. But where I drive a lot, and I go like to the base of a lot of mountains. Now, I mean, like there's Mount Adams, there's these huge mountains. So if you're into outdoor stuff, it's amazing. I am not. I'm inside playing guitar, talking about music. But for those who love the outdoors, it's amazing. So
yeah, I did Mount St. Helens and a little town called Astoria where they filmed the Goonies.
I drive through there once a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, small world.
Yeah.
So Bryan with a Y.
Yeah.
You've always what sort of age was it when you first started making a living off the guitar?
Well, so a lot of all my education with music has been private. So I've had private teachers. I've studied with people with PhDs, took lessons, and I went to college for electronics. So I worked as an electronics technician in the Ottawa region where I was in Canada. They had a very booming high tech industry in the 90s, 80s and 90s. And so I did that. It was tough for a while, but I started working at just giving guitar lessons and playing professionally. And I really realized with time I was quite a good guitar teacher. And bands have come and go. I've made some income. I never relied on that. I've had good years in bands. I've had bad times in bands, but I realized I was a very good guitar teacher. I just had my own methods, and it worked really well for me. And I had a point where I had a music school with over 100 students, and I had staff working for me. Music's been very good to me.
And what was it that sort of brought on that desire to go onto YouTube and start doing the videos?
So I had a YouTube channel for my music school about 10 years ago, but I didn't get YouTube. I was very primitive with my video editing. I remember seeing channels like Marty Schwartz and Justin Guitar going, look at these dumbasses. They're putting their lessons up for free. Well, now you go and their videos have millions of views. Like, I didn't get it. It was over my head. I kind of did it more just for in my little, to advertise within 30 kilometers around where my music school was. I used it more to promote my music school locally. When you do music, practicing guitar, gigging, when you do that 24/7 for 15, 20 years, however long it was, I burnt out. I got into another industry for a couple of years, did really well at it, but and then I came back to music. So even in that other industry, I was doing a little bit of YouTube, but I didn't get YouTube the way I understand YouTube now. Like, now it's like it's one of my joys, passions, being creative or whatever. But I just, what got me into it this time around was maybe Bryan can agree with me on this. I actually I like to do a lot of stuff with my channel. We do Prince requests and we do interviews. I really enjoy the interviews. I'll do some guitar lessons, but I try and keep my lessons different than what everyone else is doing. But what got me into doing this is I watched a YouTube channel where somebody had hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and I really thought that their guitar lessons, there was something wrong, because everyone I knew that subscribed to this person and played guitar sucked. And a lot of the channels, there's good channels, but a lot of the bad channels, they thrive on a kernel of a lie. And the lie is, at the end of this video, you too shall be playing guitar. And there's a lot more to guitar, and there's a lot of confusion and misconceptions. And I just said, oh man, I can do better than this. But that's what actually kind of got me into this.
And Bryan with an I, how did the YouTube journey start for you?
I think 3 years ago, well, during the pandemic, I was just doing it for basically two reasons. Like, doing it as like a way to get better and play, like, if you can't play in front of people, like kind of somehow actively putting yourself out there for all the terrible criticism, or the pluses as well, and just to get better at talking. And I just kind of did it as like a personal growth thing. And I started doing a lot of record reviews, like some of my favorite records that aren't obscure by my standards, but by the average guitar player. They have never heard of, Raul Bjorkenheim, or, so I was doing kind of these kind of adventurous guitar players. That was the whole intent, is to kind of do adventurous players and talk about people that maybe don't get talked about that much. And that didn't work. Nobody watched them. And so I started doing reactions, and that was slow. And even now, like, some nobody watches, and some, a lot of people watch. Your personality has to kind of come through more than almost anything else. That's why I'm doing it, is like to figure that all out, I guess. And that's how it started, is just like, get out there, I'll talk to people and meet people. And the cool thing is, I met you, I met Bryan, of course, now. But I was trying to find guitar players that would resonate with anybody that loves guitar, if they're open-minded. And Trey's an amazing guitar player, so I kind of went that way, and got a lot of feedback, almost too much. Like, I was just like, I can't. The one thing I'll say about Prince, though, is everyone was super sweet and always positive, and I never got anyone saying, like, I mean, sometimes I'd watch a video and I'd be like, I wouldn't show it because I didn't like it. So if you've seen it, it's because I thought it was great, because maybe Chris, you said something, or Ellie or someone else said, this is a great version. And, that was always true. So,
so
anyway.
let's pull on that thread a little bit, because I'm going to preempt the answer that Bryan will give. And I know his channel are aware that Bryan didn't really know much out of Prince beforehand, but I'll let him speak to that in a moment. But you said that you were already a fan.
Yeah.
How was that?
Well, I mean, not to get super personal, but I had a girlfriend that loved Sign of the Times. She was a Prince fan, and that record, I mean, I've heard this many times. That's the cornerstone of my Prince experience. And then Love Sexy, I think I bought that and the Batman soundtrack. And I actually love the Batman soundtrack a lot. But that's my go-to is Sign of the Times, and I still like all the songs are incredible.
Yeah, and is it that period, that 87 through about 90? Did you drift away from him then?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to, again, to talk about myself, maybe too much, but I mean, I was listening to fusion. I was a huge jazz fusion guy, and I always listened to pop music or stuff like that on the side. But Prince was just kind of this encapsulated a couple of years, but I literally lost track of what's the record after the Batman soundtrack. What's
I mean, Graffiti Bridge,
yeah,
and
right
that
there is
terrible
great
film
stuff.
that went with it.
Yeah, I didn't listen to that record. It was just that little period that I really got into him, and then always thought he was a great guitar player, a great songwriter, amazing singer, great performer like no other. So,
Yeah. And did you ever get the opportunity to go to see him live and decided not to?
oh, I think in Seattle, I can't remember what year this was. It was in the 2010s maybe that he came, and I was like, oh, that'd be really fun. And then there's a bar that always did Prince tribute nights and stuff like that, and I was there, and I was like, this is kind of not so great. And then he's like, oh man, you should have went because they had the after party or what, all of this stuff I didn't know existed. And he was like, the after party was like amazing. So that's the one time I was like almost close to going, and I kind of just said, well, I don't know if I can stand for 3 hours, no matter how great it is. So I didn't go.
But
And I'll ask a
yeah.
sorry, let me just ask a
Yeah, of course.
quick question now that's got very little relevance, but I just want to get a little bit of feedback. They have these concerts that they've done in Minneapolis where they put Prince up on a live screen, with footage taken from old concerts, or a concert tour, and then they have a live band playing underneath. So it's not a hologram, but I mean, he wasn't the tallest guy in the world anyway. So I often went to concerts and maybe you couldn't really see him. You had to look at the screen. Is that something that you would go to if they were to take that on the road?
No.
For what you're thinking though?
I don't know. That's just my initial reaction. Like if he's not there, I don't even care if it was like the whole band, that was actually, his best band. Like John Blackwell on drums, Rhonda on bass, and whoever else. That's kind of like the people I really like. I'd still be like, it's an approximation, and it's not. It's a live band, but like it depends. Yeah, I just find that almost not. I don't know what the right word is, but it's like it's not right, is what I would say. In a nutshell.
Yeah, no, it's a feedback that I think we've all had, which is that 2-packet Coachella hologram. Nobody wants that.
Yeah. I was thinking Ronnie James Dio. I guess there was supposed to be that and a Zappa one. And I love Zappa more than almost anyone. And I'm like, I've seen the Zappa tribute things every year, but going to see something with a hologram of someone who's been dead, it's just, I don't know.
But Bryan, when you say there was Prince tributes in Seattle, one of the more painful reaction videos for me, I did a reaction video to some Prince tribute acts. It was painful for me to watch. And, I had a follower of my channel and probably your channel, Margie, a wonderful woman from Australia. She said to me the other day asked me about Purple Rain, the movie. But it got me thinking, like, I can't stand seeing guys playing covers of Purple Rain on guitar. I don't care. I've seen some amazing guitar players, and I'm just like, it's just, for me, it's like, just don't go there. Just leave the magic alone.
I've done a few recently, as Chris will probably say or mention, but they're usually not good. Like there's even like they're amazing players or whatever, but it's like the singing that kills me every time. I did one with Jeff Beck. That one was like, Jeff Beck's up there too in my top 5.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was a train wreck. Like there's no way. And all I could think is Rhonda Smith, who played besides Prince, like 10 years roughly?
On and off, yeah. Yeah.
And I can't imagine she's up there going like, wow, this is really cool, seeing Steven Tyler like destroy this song. And or whoever, there's other people I didn't even recognize them. I was like, wow, okay. And then I'm doing one with God, what's his name? He's an English guitar player, Tim Miller. Is that his name? That one's coming out.
Okay.
And that one I did. It's yes, it is painful, but not as painful as it could be, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a question that we had from Patreon actually, from Ed Soy. What's the worst Prince cover or tribute that you've reacted to? So you've preempted that. For me, I think the Jeff Beck one, given the amount of talent that was on that stage, was the most egregious because they really should have known better. I have a pet peeve with the Springsteen one where, I mean, I've been ruined by Prince. I think the greatest thing that he ever did was how to teach an Irish DNA'd white man how to do the 2 and 4, as if that's the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah.
So to hear Springsteen start every lyric on the 1, it just kills me. It's like you're absolutely destroying the flow of the lyric here.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I might have watched that because someone, I think maybe Ellie mentioned that or something. And I know it exists and there's a few others. I probably won't do any more, to be honest. I just thought, there was a great Muse version of The Cross, right? I think that's what it was. It's not great, but it was good enough. Like, I was like, that's a cool, like, with a cover, you want to either make it your own and make it so good that it stands up by itself, or you do a kind of a strict, like complete, like approximation of the original, which can't be done. You can do that with like instrumental music, of course, but the singing part, like I said, it's just like, just don't try. Do your own thing, and then
Well, one of them was that it was one of the it was a show in Las Vegas, at one of the places in Las Vegas. And it's like, I played in Canada. I played at some of the A clubs, and there's a lot of pressure on you to perform and not screw up. And I'm watching this, they had great production and everything, but I'm like, this is so bad.
The tribute act. Yeah.
Didn't I stop it about halfway through the solo? I said, I can't do this anymore in the video.
Yeah.
But it's like, how did they get hired by Las Vegas? Like in Las Vegas, like I don't get it. It's so, and from a guitar player's perspective, it was bad. He was out of key. He was really pitchy. Some of his bends and licks were just like, oh my God, what is going on here? And the dude got paid for it at the end of the night, man. Maybe I just didn't do enough drugs when I was younger or something, but I'm looking at it going, oh my God.
Yeah.
Is that the worst one in your eyes of the tributes and the covers?
That one was brutal, man. I had to stop it. I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. In the middle of the
do you
video.
Do you have a best that you can think of? Someone who's at least done a half decent job of covering?
For me?
Yeah.
Actually, probably one of the better ones was the Eddie Vedder one.
Yeah.
It's and the guitar player and everything, that was probably one of the better ones that I can recall off the top of my head for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Sorry. I don't know if I mean, that one by Muse I thought was nice and it wasn't terrible and cringy. And at that point, I mean, I think I've done 3, maybe 4. Oh no, I've done like Warren Haynes doing Purple Rain. And that was just and Warren Haynes and someone else, maybe Marcus King or something like that. And they did a really great bluesy, like rock version. I thought it was decent, but out of all of those, there's none of them I would say, hey, we got, you got to check this one out.
Yeah, it's like, just don't go there. Just leave it. Just let it be. Didn't another great musician who his anniversary of passing was the other day too? Didn't he say that? Let it be.
Yeah.
Paul McCartney hasn't died, has he? Have I missed something?
Oh wait, is it? Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry. Me with names and all that other stuff.
Yep. For a fan like myself, I'll be completely honest. The other stuff that you have on both of your channels, I watch. But as a non-guitarist who likes a certain type of guitar, both of you guys are a little bit too heavy or avant-garde for my taste. Where I really enjoy watching the videos to see whether it opens me up, and I'm pretty sure, you know, I speak for quite a few of the audience for that, because that's what music is about, isn't it? You hope that somebody introduces you and opens up a new door that you haven't been down. But the crossover is absolutely the Prince reaction, and I suppose I'm still kind of blown away that you guys have come from where you've come from, and
Yeah.
the different tastes that you have, and you found something in Prince's playing and the musicianship that is enough that you've actually taken yourselves down this route. And let's start with Bryan with an I. Speak to me just in general terms about, or it is about Prince's playing that has captured you.
Well, I think it's the whole thing, and on some of these videos, pretty emotional for me, and that took me like a real reaction video, like where you express something that happens in the moment. And I'm not saying that's pretty rare, but with Prince, it's happened quite a few times where it's a combination of like that, he gives a side look and he sings, and the guitar playing I think is amazing, but it's like the whole thing for me. And I'm surprised by the guitar playing sometimes. I wouldn't say it's like technically, off the charts, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, Bryan and I both watch lots of stuff with highly technical players, but they're not like able to write a song like, a lot of the songs that we're doing. I mean, it's just really impactful. Again, I think it's the whole package for me, like the great guitar playing, great feel, obviously. And he's pretty adventurous too. It's not like he's just doing like a routine or like the same solo every time in every song. Like I see a lot of experimentation, improvisation, and then he can have the band stop on a dime and then, continue on with the song. That's an amazing thing in itself right there. So that's what kind of does
And
it.
Bryan with a Y.
So when we talk about this kind of thing, we have to talk about, and Bryan would be a good person to talk to with this. I have always said in my videos, I have a huge guitar magazine collection. I have no recollection ever of any strong references to Prince. And I watched one of Bryan's reaction videos. It was a newer one. It was to The Undertaker, and he said, "Oh, okay, well, I have the November '94 issue of Guitar World, and here they talk about." I'm like, "What?" So I immediately went over to my collection, and I've got out in the garage. I got totes, like I got tons of guitar magazines. I'm like, I don't happen to have that one, so now I feel like an ass a little bit. But I think there's a lot of things with Prince as a guitar player. It was kind of interesting for me, like his guitar tone. His kind of guitar setup is more for like a metal guitar player. That was kind of neat too. He uses active EMG pickups, Mesa heads and cabinets. I like the fact that he has a very simple setup. I've seen some crazy setups on stage, and I think that's not practical, man. You go play in a club where people are drunk and they're, up on stage dancing and spilling beer and stepping on where the power adapter connects into your pedals. But technically, he's phenomenal guitar player. I talk often about how he gets into this other zone with his playing that a lot of us aren't going to reach, no matter how many technically professional you are. But what a lot of people don't understand with Prince, I can remember, playing regional gigs. If I had to sing half the night and play guitar, I remember how exhausted and drained I would be at the end of the night. But that's just me up on stage playing. I'm commanding a band, but I'm not commanding like, a 20-piece band. I'm not looking over, paying attention to every detail while I'm performing, looking over the sound guy, giving him certain eyebrow movements, or the monitor mix guy. I'm not thinking about what the lights are doing. Is everything, his brain worked on a level that I really don't think people get and understand. And I try and convey that because I look at it all around as a musician, guitar player, but as a performer. We recently interviewed Scotty Baldwin. For me, that was amazing because I did time. I also had to learn how to mix sound, so talking to a master like that, again, we'll be talking to him again soon, but I have like 4,000 questions I could ask the guy. But I don't think people realize how much in command Prince was of everything when he was on stage, not just singing and playing some guitar. Like nothing went by without him noticing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and sadly, it's the yardstick that I hold most musicians to, which is
Good luck.
supremely unfair. Yeah. So, in terms of, you both said something around the level of technique that he had, and the I suppose the musical vocabulary that he comes from.
Yeah.
Is this sort of pentatonic, blues based, the odd little flourish around that, like a mixolydian I've heard described, which
Yeah.
I don't think is a million miles away from pentatonic. But can you speak to, I suppose, it's not a technique thing, is it an imagination or a creativity that he had with, the same building blocks that most people learn?
In jazz, when you go over certain patterns and certain scales and go over them, then when you're actually in a position where you improvise, sometimes you've been over something so much. In jazz, they refer to it as a horn sense. You just play, right? Sometimes you even stop thinking, you just play because you've been over. So there is a creative element to it as well. I've heard them also use the Aeolian or natural minor scale a little bit, the major scale sometimes, but definitely most of his licks revolve around the major, minor, pentatonic, and the blues scale. His licks were incredible. Just his feeling, his timing, his accenting the notes. Yeah, he was just he nobody picks up a guitar and can play like Eddie Van Halen or Prince or Yngwie Malmsteen, or it just doesn't happen that way. I don't care what people say. Sometimes, I had someone recently post on a Prince video, they said he was 100% self-taught. And I wrote back, not to be confrontational, but I just said, when you say he was 100% self-taught, do you mean that no one else has sat down with him with a guitar and showed him how to tune or play a certain lick? Or anyway, but there is a certain X factor he has, and most of us will never see it from the performance aspect, but it's getting the message across when you're playing. When there's a famous scene in the movie Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix, where they're playing Folsom Prison Blues, they're paying for this precious studio time, they're trying to record. The studio manager's like, I've heard the song 4,000 times. Play the song and make me believe it. Do you believe Prince when you watch him on stage and play? Has there ever been a performance where you just weren't buying it?
Yeah, very few. Yeah.
Right. Again, I'm not trying to, bring in other genres and stuff, but a metal band I like, Chimera, their guitar player, he was great at capturing. That band was truly pissed off when they came out and played. I bought what they were selling. I'll watch other metal bands go, I'm not buying it. I don't believe it. So I've never once seen a performance with Prince that I didn't believe.
Hmm. And one thing that I've noticed, obviously consuming, thousands of these bootlegs and live performances, is that he never really seems to play the same thing twice. It's obviously there's the structure of the song,
Yeah.
but I think we've, all three of us have heard multiple versions of that Purple Rain solo.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't say that he's playing the same thing necessarily in the same order each time.
Yeah.
He tends to play that little tag at the end. That's it.
Yeah.
That I won't try to sing it because I don't have functioning vocals. But anyway, yeah. So I would say, like if you take the song, like what he was really great at, when he's best at from a guitar standpoint, I love in music where you're surprised by something. Like it makes sense, but there's just that little twist. And I'm trying to think of a great example. The Cross isn't the best example, but it's got that great Lydian melody, and it's just kind of cool sounding. It sounds a little exotic. And then there's just some songs where he does that. That's so great. But as far as an improviser, yeah, I mean, I think, he, like Bryan would say, like you can spend a lot of time. I have spent decades, and there's still times where you go to bend where it's not in tune, and that can be fine in certain ways, but I never hear him, I hear him to be sloppy. I've heard him miss notes and all of that, but I mean, that happens to almost everybody, no matter how amazing they are. And I would say he definitely was always firing at 95%, if not above 100%. And I think what's cool is him doing like Stratus and doing like the Santana stuff. That kind of goes to his roots. I think a little bit for like solo guitar stuff like Carlos Santana, he would say is an influence. I heard him mention that, or at least talk about him a little bit. And I won't bring up the Hendrix thing per se, but yeah, I mean, I don't think he sounds like Jimi Hendrix. I always just say, like, man, it would have been great if he put together a trio. I've said this in so many of the videos. In fact, I have one coming out of version of them changes with Buddy Miles on drums and with Prince somewhere. I can't remember it's from. It's not the best because Buddy Miles, but he just really could do that stuff. And to me, it's not like he's copying it or whatever. He just could really put his whole heart into something, sing it, play it, and it just took it to another. Like, that's a great person that does a great cover. Like, if you can pull a Hendrix song off and make it 100 times better, and he just, I mean, he did it, and he made it his own in a way. So,
and the thing that a lot of people don't understand is sometimes you really arrive as a professional musician when you can make a mistake look like $1 million. Right. So I many years ago, when I would play, I had a friend of mine, he liked my playing, he came out every time I gig, he'd say, dude, you sounded great, but you know what? Every time you made a mistake, you made this funny face. I said, really? And he said, yeah, you do this, like, I don't know what it was something really animated and crazy. And I fixed that. And when I fixed that, I started to learn, and I started to teach my students. I'd say, hey, if you're never ever sit on a bad note, always be aware of where the root is with what you're playing over, and you roll through it with like some chromatic licks or something, but you really start to arrive. Now, I would never compare myself to Prince ever. He could make a mistake sound like $1 million. I could probably make it sound about like $50,000. But that's something that a lot of people don't understand. There's times you're watching these artists, they make mistakes, but you never know.
Yeah, I think it was something that he actually drilled into his band. If you make a mistake, make it 3 times, and then the audience think that you meant it.
Yeah,
now,
exactly.
From the outside, I would imagine it would be easy enough to just repeat the mistake. But then, if you've learned these chord patterns and your wrist wants to go in a certain way, I would imagine it's actually quite hard to make the same mistake again, isn't it? So I don't know how. I don't know how he managed to get people to do that, but yeah, if it's a mistake, make it 3 times. So you mentioned this sort of place that people go to when they're playing guitar solos.
Yeah.
Is it a fluidity? Is it they're open to just where the sound might go? Because I've heard John Mayer talk about getting into that place.
Yeah.
And he was always envious when he would see another player sort of close his eyes and off he went. And you can see John Mayer sort of fake it, where he's closed his eyes and he's pretending that he's gone to that zone, and he actually hasn't.
Yeah.
But is that something that you guys are familiar with?
I've always been a pretty consistently decent player when I would perform. I have had a few fleeting moments of like, wow, everything's going right tonight, no matter what I do. And then you have other nights where it's like, oh, wow, like something happened to my cable, or I broke a string, but I think there's just some people, and we have to be, I want to mind my words very carefully here. Jimi Hendrix was phenomenal. I love his music. I've had my but I used to get really irritated when he would always be taking up half a guitar magazine every month. He was still human. He made mistakes, but there are certain people that could just transcend to this different level of playing. I did just a Patreon reaction the other day. It was a Chris Stapleton thing with Justin Timberlake. Justin Timberlake's a good musician, man. Like, I was never into. Can you imagine me listening to NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys? Like, come on now, that would put my estrogen up. But he's very talented. But he's not Chris Stapleton at country music. Like, Chris Stapleton has that X factor. He's a good guitar player, but with his voice, like, listen to his voice. Some people have that. I would never ever claim to have ever truly had that. Like, some people, very few people would have that. Prince would definitely be one of them.
And I suppose the solo side of things takes up a lot of when people praise Prince for his guitar playing, but I think his rhythm was basically untouchable because to my ear it's kind of Nile Rodgers level, and yet Nile can't do solos. Nile can't do a lot of the lead work that someone like Prince would do. Was it something that you were surprised by when you heard the sort of the types and styles of guitar that he could play? Should we go Brian with an eye?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised because the core to all like great R&B and funk players is rhythm. And like what he present, I mean, he was being early on, I don't know his whole history, but early on he's being a front man, still playing guitar, but it wasn't as much guitar at the beginning. Like I think he took it on and off quite a bit, and it was more of like the front man, I'm singing, someone else will play the guitar. So I knew doing all of that stuff and all the work he put in, it wasn't surprising to me that he had incredible rhythm chops. So, and again, that doesn't come a lot. You don't hear that on a lot of songs, but he could bring it because I know he could do it. So I was not surprised that he's a great rhythm player.
I am enamored by funk guitar players. I was always a good lead player, technically really good alternate picker, sweet picker, legato, all that other stuff, riffer for metal, could play clean chords, play a bit of jazz stuff, but that really funky, sometimes the 16th note with throwing in different muting, it just wasn't my thing. I think I told a story in a video one time. I auditioned for like a jazz swing band back in 2005, and it just wasn't my thing. And the guy who kind of ran, he was a bit of a dick. He wasn't a well-liked guy. He had some personality issues, but at the same time, I learned a lot from him. But at the end, he just said you're too tight, and he didn't mean it like being tight with the band is good, but he meant it like there's no like groove and flow with you. It's just very, and he was right. It was just never my thing. But like, so when I see people like Prince, or even I've seen some videos of Jesse Johnson play, like I'm watching them going, man, like that is. I did a thing. One of our friends, Mark, he had me do a reaction to a Corey Wong funk instructional. It was just amazing watching those guys play. I have improved at it, but you're never going to see me play in a funk band. Not because I wouldn't want to at this point. I'm open-minded enough to, but just it's those guys are awesome. I really enjoy watching.
Yeah, I think you're right. In it is the bedrock of a certain type of music that they've come up through. And I often sort of nowadays when I read the immediate Jimi Hendrix comparison, which I think is more physical, certainly because Prince played to the sort of fashions of Hendrix throughout the years. The Santana comparison, I get that. I don't think it's the major one for me. I hear a lot of Eddie Irvin from the Funkadelic and those sorts of bands, and I hear a lot of like sort of Ike Turner in the rhythm playing, the tightness of that rhythm.
I get that.
Which I think they're not names that sell magazines necessarily as much as if you drop Hendrix or Santana. So I get why people do the comparisons. That Rock and Roll Hall of Fame clip, that sort of has brought a lot of people to Prince and the guitar side of his music. Do you remember what the first reaction video was that you stumbled across or were given and started the journey? Whoever can remember first, I suppose.
I'll speak first, but I don't remember first, but I do remember like hitting upon it just as like, I love Prince, to in a very mild sense of that. And I'll have to look back and see, but I don't remember. I've done like 80, and I'm sure Bryan has done probably that many. And I've
you're roughly the same in number of videos. It's about 75 each.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That have been published.
I was going to say quickly is I didn't want to say that I see Prince as like influenced a lot by Hendrix or Santana. I was just saying like I thought it was great that he plays those songs. Like that's kind of what I was trying to say. So just to be If
Yeah, sure.
I would never compare him like he was trying to be like Carlos Santana. I guess he just maybe mentioned it in an article, like he liked what he was doing or something. So yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
My first reaction with Prince, it was the Hall of Fame solo, and I watched it and I was amazed. But I still, even to this day, you guys, we had a quick chat before we started recording this video. Like, it kind of haunts me now. Like, I think back to the 80s. My education was what was on TV and also my guitar magazines. I don't have any recollection of Prince ever being mentioned in the 80s or into the early 90s in any serious context in any of the guitar magazines. I have vague memories. Purple Rain, when it came out, I remember seeing pictures of him with the motorbike and the telly over his shoulder. Maybe the intro of When Doves Cry, I think I might have heard. So I was surprised, but I wasn't like, there was something in the back of my head saying, no, he did play guitar, but I just, in the 80s, I remember like he was singing and dancing. He wasn't doing a lot of guitar stuff, the stuff I saw in the music videos and stuff. So, but that kind of haunts me to this day. Like, why did I not know he was the guitar player that he was? I don't know. It still kind of haunts me a little bit. I've done a lot of soul searching over
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's sorry.
I was just gonna say quickly the intro to When Doves Cry is what I was like, yeah, the octaver and just kind of overdriven sound. I was like, that's cool. And so I'm just loved guitar. So I was like, that's what kind of started for me. I'm 55, so Purple Rain came out, was an enormous thing, like the movie, and I probably didn't love it, but I remember When Doves Cry and being like, man, that's some killer guitar playing and just a great sound that you wouldn't hear on any other thing, especially from someone that wasn't like a hard rock player or whatever, or even considered a guitar player. And
Yeah.
so
I remember it must have been 84. I remember eating lunch in my elementary school, and this one kid, his name was Steven, he spilled some grape juice on his shirt, and he said, "Oh my God, I have a purple stain on my shirt." And he was kind of all upset. And this guy Martin, he was always a smart ass, started saying, "Purple stain," and so that's one of my memories that I have about Purple Rain back, when I was 11 or whatever it was. So
Yeah, you've permeated the public consciousness when that happens.
I
So-
have a question. Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Have you watched the Purple Rain movie recently?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough, isn't it?
I don't get it. So I'll say a story from when that came out. I was in my teens or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it was like 16 or whatever. And I was always pissed in a way because all the girls I knew loved that movie and were in love with Prince. And I was just like, I get it, he's a great guitar player and he dances or whatever. And I just watched that movie back then and I was like, this is unwatchable. And so my girlfriend and I watched it recently, and I go, it's unwatchable to me. As much as I love Prince, I was like, it just seems like he obviously matured into a lot of things, but that one's kind of interesting to watch. And I didn't remember it at all. And the end part, like they're playing for like 15 minutes or something. Anyway, interesting movie. So
Yeah,
So-
you've watched it recently, haven't you?
Yeah. So on that note, so one of my loves is I collect DVDs and Blu-rays, but good stuff. I don't like a lot of the movies out there. Solitary Adventure and I, we've had in-depth conversations about movies, TV shows. I'm very particular. I think a lot of stuff out there now is junk, but I don't pay full price for. I remember getting the movie The Joker at a pawn shop a few years ago, and it still had the Walmart $35 price tag on it, and I bought it at the pawn shop for $1 Canadian. So it's about 12 cents American, Brian. So I'm like, somebody paid this much money. So anyway, to make a long story short, last fall of 2021, we were out. Okay, I'm in Canada, but I'm in Quebec, and we're kind of, I'm not going to say out in the booties, but it's somewhat remote. But we went for this nice fall drive. the leaves were changing. It was wonderful and everything. And we were in this little town, and we stopped, and there was a yard sale. And I looked through the yard sale bin, and Purple Rain was one of the movies. And I said, hey, I want to get this. I want to get it and watch it. This is before my first reaction video, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I paid $0.25 Canadian for it, which would be about 11 cents American buck. So anyway, the first time I watched it, it was after I watched it and I posted about it. But this time there were some people that were Prince fans kind of watching my channel, and I just said, but through everyone kind of guiding me and talking about it, the first time it was unwatchable. I really struggled to get about halfway through, and I remember looking at my partner, and I remember saying to her, I said, like, is it just me or do I want to turn this off? She said, no, let's turn it off. But I went back later on and I got through it. I actually enjoyed it. You know, Prince is amazing at many things. I'm not going to say that acting is one of them, but you know, if you could get through that and just, you know, say, hey, it's his first foray into this. But I got it, and I enjoyed it. And I'll be honest too, at the time in that movie, I thought Wendy was very, very hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I stopped recommending Purple Rain to people about 5 or 6 years ago because I rewatched it. I think they had an evening for Prince when he died on British TV. And of course, Purple Rain's like the centerpiece of, you know, 3 hours of documentaries, then we're going to give you Purple Rain. It doesn't play well in a modern world, you know, with the misogyny and, you know, some of the things that are going on. It's a relatively dark movie, and the original script apparently was even darker, which I don't even want to know where that would have gone and how that would have flown. But I think it speaks to a bigger thing in so an analogy that I've used is that I jumped on the Prince treadmill in '94 at the age of 14. And I have exactly the same experience as every other Prince fan from '94 onwards, because I was absorbing the music and seeing the shows as they happened. But there was only so much that you could garner because it was kind of pre-internet. It certainly wasn't the internet that we have now, where everything's the touch of a button. So it was one of the few ways that you could see Prince live outside of, you know, the concert films. So I think it held a lot more sway for fans of my sort of era, because it was just Prince doing a live performance and on the biggest stage of all, on the silver screen. I think it's different now when you can go on YouTube and you can just type in Prince HD, you know, somewhere between 4 and 20 minutes. You can filter right down and you can get these amazing solos that, if it wasn't for, you know, him passing, would still be under lock and key.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that there's a real irony there, that the way that I became a fan is not necessarily a route that will capture people in the same way now that he's passed. But we've got this other route with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame clip, and, you know, just go on YouTube, type Prince and guitar, and suddenly you get the route that is more your guys' route, where you've gone almost backwards in his career in terms of the video.